We are live in the Shape-Free Zone. Hi there. This is Veronica Monet. Got a fantastic topic today. I think it's right on time. We're going to be talking about our relationship with the police. And we're not going to go in the political direction here so much. I want to really have a personal conversation. So I've been arrested 3 times, and I have with me today Falisa Asberry, who is a former police officer. Felisa, thank you so much for joining me in the Shame-Free Zone.
Yes, thank you for having me, Veronica.
I am really excited that you're here. And I'm going to just read a little bit about your bio because you are a very complex, accomplished, amazing woman.
Thank you.
So prior to becoming a transformational coach, that's right, she went from police officer to transformational coach. Felisa started her impressive career and studies in Cleveland, Ohio. Her fascination with human behavior began to grow during her 26 plus years working in law enforcement. It was there that Felisa was able to observe families and children suffering from dysfunctional relationships. Felisa, you and I both have seen a lot of that. Through her work as a police officer and eventually as a detective, Felisa's curiosity led her to pursue a doctoral degree in psychology, specializing in counseling. With a psychology degree from Western University and a bachelor's in criminal justice with cum laude honors from David N. Myers University, as well as a Master of Science degree in the Administration of Criminal Justice from Tiffin University. How many degrees do you have here? Felisa has a unique and full understanding of the real world human experience. Through extensive work in emotional intelligence and leadership studies, Felisa is the ultimate guiding light for families, women, first responders, and young adults. From effective communication techniques to the tools needed to create successful relationships, she has been able to support numerous clients in working through the layers of life they feel are holding them back. We all have those.
Yeah.
So,
let
Felisa,
me just correct you. One thing, Veronica, I'm pursuing a doctoral degree and it's from Walden University.
Okay. Great. And I think you're researching trauma. Am I right about that?
Vicarious traumatization in Metropolitan Police.
I think I just can't wait until your research is public. I want to dive into it. I'm kind of nerdy that way. I read research papers. Anyway, I don't usually read such an extensive bio from my guests, but this time because we are talking about the police, I really want us to look at the human side here. And I also want to look at the human side of people who get arrested. So, being perfectly transparent, the first time I got arrested, I was 21. I was drunk and in the front seat of a car and frankly, not really hurting anybody, but some passerbys were scandalized that my boyfriend and I were being a little inappropriate. So I felt pretty resentful about going to jail for that. And I was exposed to some police and judicial corruption at that time. I actually, not prison guard, but the jail matron, for lack of a better word, that was what they called them back then. She tried to rob me. She wanted me to sign for 65 cents. And I had just gotten paid that day. So I had like $300 cash in my wallet. So I had a really negative first experience. And certainly what I've noticed with a lot of my friends is we can start to kind of build a case against the police. And because, they might have had negative experiences as well. I also know that one time, this same summer, I was living in Reno. I was a college student and I was working at a casino. And I came home late. I worked graveyard shift. I came home late and a young man followed me to my door. And he started trying to break the door down. It had a glass window in it. And he was trying to get in to rape me. And that was really scary. And I'll never forget the female police officer dispatcher who was on the phone and stayed with me the whole time And I was so grateful that the police came and saved me. I mean, literally, it was just so those two experiences, age 21, still in college, and they both happened within probably 3 weeks of each other.
Yeah.
So I felt like the universe was kind of trying to let me know that I couldn't paint this topic with a broad brush. So I'm just kind of starting our conversation off with that, and I'm really eager to find out what it's like on the other side of that badge, because I've not ever been there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let me just start out by saying, Veronica, that it takes a very special person to be a police officer, because we are, and let me remind your guests, I am retired. I recently retired in March of 2020. And
That's
so,
very recent.
yeah, I just retired.
Wow.
And over my career of 26.9 years, I had to learn how to be the police. And what I mean by that is there's so many different things that come along with being the police. You are put into a situation where you're expected to be a leader, so to speak, in your community. And if you don't necessarily have those leadership skills,
Yeah.
you're just a person in a situation attempting to manage it.
Mm.
If you don't have the managerial skills, you do the best you can.
Right.
And in my opinion, there's a lack there in terms of the training that we are given as police officers. Now, bear in mind that the training is different, vastly different throughout the different departments or agencies. Um, so in the case of, the people that responded to your situation, that left you with a bad taste in your mouth,
Yeah.
they may have been doing the best they could with the training or whatever they had. You understand what I'm saying? So it just varies, and that's the sad part about it. The experiences of people vary based on who they're interacting with.
Yeah. So I'm thinking that you might have, with all your extensive experience, you might have some insights into what would create a more cohesive or um, positive experience of the police. Or I don't know, are you suggesting that we need more training, or?
Well, the training should be ongoing, obviously, because things change.
Yeah.
Situations are different. Every situation you go into has its own elements. What I think is most important as a police officer is how you feel on the inside. First of all, how you feel about yourself, and how you feel going into a situation, and what you're swearing to do once you're there. So I think the biggest thing is understanding why you took the job, why you took the
Yeah.
oath, and staying there. If you ever lose sight of why you took that oath to protect and serve, then you get to reevaluate your situation, why you're in that situation. Because it takes a very special person to do the job. We're Police officers are looked at as the enemy until we're needed. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Oh,
People.
I definitely do. Can we pause and just go into that one a little bit deeper?
Mhm.
What is that like, to be seen as the enemy until you're needed? Like, the only experience that I have of that is possibly being a parent to a teenager.
Mhm. Very similar. I have two children myself, and so yeah, very similar to that.
Yeah.
You're unwanted until you're needed.
Mm.
So that experience for me was difficult in the beginning, before I learned or evolved into the person I am now. And that might sound strange, but you really have to understand what you're there for. We are called upon to manage, to assist, to mediate, to all of that
Yeah.
situations, and sometimes remove people, and sometimes alter lives. right? And if you're not clear on your job, on your responsibility as a police officer, it can go astray. Not just with the person that you're interacting or people you're interacting with, but also within yourself.
What is the oath that is taken? How did you hold that? What was your commitment?
Um, Let me be very honest with this. It was hard. A lot of times it was really, really difficult, especially if I wasn't taking care of myself, meaning exercise, good sleep, eating properly, training. Then you kind of lose sight of what you're doing, or I lost sight of what I was doing.
Yeah.
Never did I have any physical confrontations with people. I did have physical confrontation with people in my department, but that's a different story.
Oh,
Yeah, that's a
oh,
different
oh.
story.
So, okay. So was that sexual harassment?
No, 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 no. I don't look at it. I didn't look at it as anything like that. I did look at it a little misogynistic,
Hmm.
um, because I felt like what happened to me would not have happened to a male officer.
Ah, right.
But that's a different question, a different conversation. So basically, when as I was going through my years of service, providing service,
Right.
um, I really paid attention to how I was feeling. And as I learned more, as I trained more, as I grew more, as I turned the attention out to the people who
Mm,
were in need of support. And, I just kind of really, how can I put it? I just really care about people. And it didn't always start out that way. It didn't. And I'm being honest, it didn't always start out that way because I'm in my feelings. I was 24 or something like that when I started being the police.
wow.
So I was
That's
really
so
taking,
young.
and I was really taking care of myself, not thinking that it was so much of myself was required to take care of other people.
Right.
But
Right.
once I got wind of what I was doing, got a handle on what I was doing, it became a passion of mine to support other people. And so that's why once I retired, I carried it on into my own business to continue to support other people where I know that support is required or needed.
Yeah. You
And then
know,
I teach in the academy also. So
oh,
I'm used to, training other officers on how to be police officers,
what?
or recruits of how to be police officers.
So this, it's like the last 9 months, we've seen a lot.
Mhm,
We've seen, and when I say we, I'm talking about all of us that have any access to the internet or our
mhm,
smartphones have seen the Black Lives Matter protests. We've seen rioting and looting associated with that as well.
mhm,
We've seen some police brutality that was pretty egregious.
mhm,
And then we saw the storming of the Capitol, and we saw some officers get brutalized by rioters. And
mhm,
then we also know that two officers lost their lives. One because he was beaten um, savagely with a fire extinguisher, and another one, I believe, because he committed suicide shortly after that. How does all of that sit with you? I know I've had various different reactions. I've felt my emotions going all over the place. I was
mhm.
angry at the police that were coming out against the Black Lives Matter protesters, and then I was absolutely horrified and heartbroken, cried when I saw what was happening to the Capitol Police. Just wondering, as a former police officer, how did all of those events land for you? And let's start with the Black Lives Matter protests. I wonder, seeing it through your eyes, what did you see?
Um, I think Black Lives Matter is an organization that has a broad scope of what they're, attempting to do.
Yeah.
In terms of police, it starts with or goes back to the individual police officer. And that's what one of the things that I just really don't like about how it is publicized. Police officers are painted with a broad brush,
Hmm.
and that's not what it is. It's an individual incident involving individuals, and it's not the police per se. Yes, there are some people that probably should not have continued on the job, or sworn in to do the job, or been selected to do the job. um, but I believe that, as an individual going into any of those situations, um, if I could go, imaginarily go into any of those situations, I am first trying to be make sure I'm safe, but I am still in a situation where I'm trying to protect and serve other people. I'm
Hmm.
in the business of serving. Everybody's not in the business of serving. Some people just go into the job to have the authority, to carry a gun, to wear the badge, to drive fast. I mean, there's various reasons why people choose the profession or the occupation of policing. For me, it was initially job security, but it evolved into me caring about my fellow person, individual, regardless of skin color, gender, sexual orientation. That doesn't matter to me. It's the human being that I'm looking to support. And I believe there are millions of other people who are in this professional occupation who have the same spirit within them. And yes, there are a few people who are not, I don't know how many, of course, but there are people who probably should not be in the job. It's
So,
just like any other occupation.
well, so some people have said that just bad apples, a few bad apples. Others have said that maybe the system actually is failing, and needs to be changed, tweaked, improved in some way. How do
Well,
you see that as
I
somebody
believe
who trains officers?
I believe that the system is in need of reform. We've probably been conducting ourselves as far as training um, very much the same since the beginning of policing.
Mm.
And not much has changed in terms of how we train or how we really select the candidates to be police. So I
Yeah.
think that that can be something that is looked at, how we select people, because I would have never thought in my wildest dreams that we have police officers storming the Capitol, or police officers behaving the way they have in some of the situations the high profile cases that we've seen.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, really, you got to understand, what's your purpose? What are you doing here? And for those folks that were at the Capitol who are in their occupation, police officers, what is your purpose here? What are you doing? You understand what I'm saying? So I think that a real hard look at how we select people to become police officers is necessary. Again, you really got to know who you are
And I
before.
think what I'm hearing, Felisa, I'm hearing, let me know if I've got this. I'm kind of intuiting something here, but that maybe like with the Black Lives Matter um, protests, where we saw some police brutality. There's no other way to refer to it. That it is almost painful for the other officers who aren't engaging in that behavior, to have all of them painted with that broad brush, that that's what the police did.
Yeah,
Am I hearing you right?
absolutely. It's
Okay.
it's to me, like a person like me who's in it for the right reasons, it's shameful. It's embarrassing
Yeah.
for other officers to behave that way, because that's not what we're setting out to do.
Yeah. Yeah. At the same time, I'm thinking about, you and I had a conversation about a week ago about George Floyd's murder.
Hmm.
And you said some things I'd not heard anybody say about the officer who murdered him. And I'm wondering, could you just give us your perspective on that? Because as I understand it, you were actually seeing him as ill-fitted for the job, which felt remarkably compassionate to me.
So, in a situation like his, I don't know his whole story, his background, and all of that. All I know is what is reported via the media. And so I can only go by that. But the information that I am aware of is that he had several incidents in which he was considered aggressive or not becoming a police officer, but yet
Right.
he stayed on the job. He was still in the position of policing, protecting, and serving. And to me, had he not been in that position, I mean, had he been removed from that position, it might have saved him from possibly spending the rest of his life in jail, in
Hmm.
prison. So it's a disservice. It's a disservice to put people in positions of leadership, authority, police when they're not ready or they shouldn't be there. It's a disservice because actually this dude went from sugar to, well, not sugar, but he went to his whole life has been altered because of the position that he's been allowed to be in.
Hmm.
It's a privilege to be able to serve, to protect. That's a privilege. And everybody does not get that privilege. You don't get to do that if you don't know how to behave, if you don't know what you're there for, and you're ready um, to take the steps to do the job. You don't get that privilege to be there. There's a privilege to be able to intervene in somebody's life to support them. That's a privilege.
I love the way you put that, intervene in somebody's life and support them.
And if that's not what you're up to, you should not be there because, again, it's a disservice to you as a person, an individual, family man, a husband, a father, or whomever. That's a disservice to you because ultimately, what's going to happen when you're not supposed to be there is you'll get in a situation that is not good.
Mm.
Like this, like that guy who made the choices that he made.
Yeah, I can see the spelling of his name, Chauvin or something like that. I
Mhm.
mostly don't even make it a practice to memorize his name because I
Mhm.
want to remember George Floyd.
Mhm.
What about racism in the police force? Do you think it's a problem? And do you think there are certain departments that might be more racist than others?
Well, I don't want to. I can't. In all honesty, I can't say yes or no to that answer
Okay.
because whenever I make a statement, I want to be sure that I am correct in when I say it.
Uh,
I can assume, but it's not always safe to assume in those situations.
yeah.
But I do understand that there are people who have biases, um, in implicit biases
Hmm.
or prejudices
Hmm.
because of where they may have grown up or their interactions with other people. So I'm aware of that. And that happens with all of us.
Yeah.
And it ultimately is a matter of choice. How do you proceed based on your choices? You
Hmm.
know, I may not have grown up with a particular type of person, but I choose to treat everybody fairly.
Yeah.
So that would be my response to that.
Okay. Gotcha. Well, how was it for you to see the storming of the Capitol? There were a lot of assaults of police officers, some of them incredibly brutal and heartbreaking, and one of them actually a murder.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering how that was for you. Because we're talking, earlier we mentioned something about vicarious trauma in police officers, but what about actual trauma?
Mhm. Well, it's just like if an individual was assaulted. It's a person, and so I feel like we are not on a pedestal, so to speak, in those sort of situations. I mean, it's unfortunate that people choose to or chose to cause harm because of a uniform. That's unfortunate. But I think it's unfortunate that anybody was harmed, that the whole thing took place the way it did was unfortunate to me. Um,
It's interesting, Felisa, for me, because I have depended on the police to protect me at various times in my life, um, even though I've had a fraught relationship with the police and saw some departments as corrupt, others as racist. Um, and I also agree, I think we need reform. But I almost feel like there was like a little kid inside who wants to think that daddy or mommy can always prevail, can always protect. And to watch them be overwhelmed like that, and brutalized like that, yes, it humanized them for me as well. I saw way past that badge and that uniform to this human being that was suffering. But I also think I felt like, oh my God, if we lose this protection, then it's the Wild West and anything can happen. And when I hear people talking about things like defunding the police, I'm like, okay, maybe we put some of the funds in some other areas because not everything has to fall to the police. I get that. But we certainly don't want to eliminate them. I lived in the Wild West for 8 years up in the mountains where there were no police, and it's scary.
Yeah. We can't, first of all, Veronica, let's just be clear. We cannot function as a society like we do without police officers. We just can't. I think if we poured more money into the training of police officers and also being very much aware of who it is that we are hiring as police officers, the individual at the core, who are you at the core? And are you really in for the job, because again, it takes a very special person to do it. you know um if we poured more funding into that, and the upper echelons of the departments aren't trying to figure out who to put on in training and who to put on the street in order to protect their communities, I think that if it's easier to provide training, we would be in a much better place, period.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like in my former agency, there was a thing where you may not be able to go to training because we don't have enough people on the street or to cover the shift, and that right there tells you, well, that I might not get the training that's needed.
Oh,
Or if we are mandating certain training um, throughout the year for police officers, ongoing training, just like any other profession where you get to alter people's lives, you get
right.
it should be ongoing, constant training
Yeah.
to make sure that the individual who is doing the altering or put in that position to do the altering is up to par, not just with their own mental health, but understanding the mental health of the citizens in their community.
Yeah. That's a big issue, mental health. Um, Statistically, female officers are far less likely to have violent confrontations with the public. Um, was that your personal experience?
Well, for me, again, I can speak for myself and how I encountered the job. Um, I didn't have any physical confrontations on the street. Like I said, I did have a confrontation with people that I was working with. But again, I believe that came from a misogynistic place.
Yeah.
Uh, and it probably should have never happened. In hindsight, I think it was a divine assignment, if I may,
Yeah.
because it took me there's an it took me on a different trajectory for how I wanted to give back after I retired. So I went through a whole process. It also um, gave me my area of study for my doctoral study, the research that I'm doing. And so the back to the question is, whether or not female police officers are less likely to get involved. It's hard to say. Again, it's to the individual. You may have some female officers who are, they have an agenda. They might want to prove themselves. Who knows? But I think it just depends on the individual.
Years ago, I rode shotgun with a female police sergeant here in California. And I was I was working as a journalist for a TV show. It was exciting. It was full of adrenaline. We made a couple of rests while I was on this shift, but I also noticed she kind of abused the job a little bit. Like, she parked illegally, she drove too fast, she expected free food from a local restaurant. So yeah,
It comes like anything else. It's how integrous are you,
yeah,
individual, you
yeah,
know? Um, Now, don't get me wrong, being a police officer does have its perks.
yeah,
Does have its perks. And it's also sometimes people in the community want to thank you for your service. And that is oftentimes appreciated. But when you step over those boundaries and you have your agenda, your own agenda,
yeah.
then that's where it becomes a problem.
I was never sure if it was who she was or if she was just showing off for the press, but
It,
um,
it probably is who she is,
thank
because
you.
regardless of whether the press is there or not, integrity shines either way. You know what I
So,
mean?
Felicia, you were talking about a divine intervention, or um,
Mhm.
I couldn't help but see the Black Lives Matter protests and the storming of the Capitol as kind of bookends to a topic that I hope, it would be my hope, that we don't have a homogenous, monolithic view of protesters or of the police. That we've had so much exposure now in the last several months about the human side of all of this on both sides.
Mhm.
And they are all human beings.
We're human beings first.
Yeah, yes,
First.
we are. We are human.
Mhm.
I Speaking of getting more into the human side of things, you have children, you have a husband. Am I right about that?
Yes. Yep. 20. This is 25 years married.
Oh, congratulations. As
Thank
a
you.
relationship coach, I just love to hear that.
Mhm.
Um, what was it like to be a mother and a wife and a police officer simultaneously? What was that like for you?
A challenge.
Well, I figure that goes without saying.
It was challenging because, you get to wear different hats, just like in any other situation. However, at work, I'm in a position of authority. At home, I'm in a position of authority, but not so much.
You got to share authority, right?
Shared authority, right?
Yeah.
Or I sometimes wanted to just not have it.
Hmm.
Do you know what I mean? I wanted to be able to just set that hat down.
Oh, yeah. I totally understand that.
Now, with my girls who are now adults, they turned out just fine. However, I'm sure I was a little harder on them than I probably would have been had I not been a police officer, because it was my way of protecting them from the things that I saw as I did the work.
Yeah.
Yeah, they turned out just fine. And what I've learned over the years is that I really get to continue the conversations with them. I was able to talk and
Mm,
help them or support them in understanding the work that I was doing and the reasons why I did what I did.
yeah. Yeah. You know, you're researching now vicarious trauma in police officers. Do you think you experienced any of that?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And this would point towards empathy, would it not? I mean, if you're going to be traumatized by what happens to other people, you
Mhm.
must have a lot of empathy.
Yeah. I care about other people. I care about other people's experiences. And I know that I call it an invisible vapor that a police officer or any individual will absorb as they interact. Um, the thing about it is, I'm not sure that we are aware that we're affected as much as we are.
Right. You know something, it reminds me of something that happened a couple years ago. Driving home, I saw a wounded deer, young deer, off to the side of the road. It had been hit by a car, and whoever hit it just hit and run. They just took off,
Mhm.
left it there. And I hate to see suffering. So I called the police and I sat there with this deer. until the policeman got there. And he was really impacted by what I had called to ask him to do, which was to put this poor deer out of its misery. And, I didn't cry, but I could tell he was deeply emotional about it. And he actually talked to this deer before he killed it. And it was very touching. I hadn't actually seen an officer be that empathetic and sensitive. And he expressed fatigue that he is having to kill deer that people hit and run. And that this wasn't the first time, wasn't even the second time, that he's had to do this a lot. And I could tell that even though he had to kill a lot of deer that people had hit with their cars, it had not become a routine for him. He hadn't become numb to it. It was still really emotionally touching him in a deep way.
Same thing for me when working with people, especially kids, young people.
Yeah.
That's the hard part, being able to separate your professional from your emotional attachment, because the culture of policing doesn't really allow you to become emotionally attached. And I mean, quite frankly, if you do, you're probably not going to last very, very long in the profession.
Do you want to balance, though? Do you want to balance between being empathetic and not getting attached?
And that's the part of the training that I make reference to. You get to learn how to do that. And that's what I mean when I said over the years, I had to learn how to be the police. It's a balance, basically. You said it perfectly. There's a balance required. You empathize, but you still get to be your professional self.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at the time. I really could talk to you for another hour or two on this topic. It's a deep one. Maybe you and I will get together and talk about it again. But I know I need to let you go because you've got a busy schedule. Is there anything else that you would like to say that I failed to ask you?
Well, for your viewers, I just want them to understand that just like everybody else, police officers are human beings, and to base your experience on your experience and not the experiences of others who you might see on social media or in the news or some other place, or even a conversation from somebody else, because everybody's experience is their own. Oftentimes when the media reports, or if something is shown on social media, the whole picture is not there. The whole story is not there. And oftentimes things escalate to a point of no return. So I want people to understand that our police officers are human, and they get to be treated as such as well. Oftentimes the citizen, well, I can't say oftentimes, but in my situation, I'm going to treat you with the utmost respect until you show me otherwise, until you show me that you are not worthy or not willing to have um, a normal interaction. And I understand that a lot of the underlying stuff is fear based, but I guess the message that I want to leave people with is each individual situation is that it's an individual situation.
I think this is something that we as a society are having to look at, the way that we hold to our stereotypes around gender, around race, around class, ethnicity, and in this case also profession. So thank you for putting a human side on this. And also it was just really, for me, enlivening to have this conversation about our various different experiences on either side of the badge. I hope that there are more conversations like this, because I know we as a society need to heal.
Yeah. And it starts with those conversations. The healing starts with, first of all, awareness, and then the conversations get to be had.
Before we go, I don't want to lose track of the fact that you are now coaching people
I am.
And you're a transformational coach. How can people reach you to tap into your wisdom?
They can go to Peacock Training and Consulting Group. Just Google it, it'll come up, Peacock Training Consulting, or Authentic All the Time is my closed Facebook group in which we just talk about becoming or peeling back those layers to be your authentic self. So they can reach me there or through you.
Yeah. And you've got a summit that's in process right now. I'm one of your guest speakers.
Yes.
Yes.
My summit is called I Am Who I Am 2.0. And it basically is where I'm talking with a variety of experts, guest speakers, sharing their expertise on how we get to be our authentic selves no matter what room you walk into, no matter what who you're interacting with, you get to be who you are. No apologies. And that's, yeah, I'm excited about it.
Yes. And you and I got pretty vulnerable and transparent in that conversation. So
It was fun. It is. It's fun.
yeah. All
Thank you.
right.
Thank you for.
Felisa, I really enjoy our conversations a lot. Thank you for this one.
Yes, of course. It's my pleasure.
Have a beautiful day.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks. Bye.